Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have folks from all around the world as FairCom is a global organization, and we've been providing great technology solutions for 45 years now. Welcome to our webinar on Making Your Machines Talk with FairCom Edge. This will include a live demo a little bit later. As a housekeeping note, during the webinar, please type your questions into the Q&A section of Zoom, and we'll be able to answer some of those as we go along. We'll also have a longer Q&A section at the end of this session where we can answer those additional questions. So my name is Jared Thane. I will be hosting this webinar, and by way of quick introduction, I have been with FairCom for 2 years and lead new sales. Joining me is our Edge lead, Walter Johnson. You may have seen us at recent trade shows such as Automate and IMTS in Chicago, as well as IoT Solutions World Congress in Barcelona, Spain. So FairCom Edge is a low-code IoT platform engineered to run on the edge, from factory floors to warehouses to wind farms and retail stores. It continuously connects, transforms, reshapes, and enriches data from connected devices, machines, and sensors for data integration, real-time monitoring, edge analytics, and cloud publishing. So I'm going to share a high-level overview of our software platform and where we fit into the ecosystem. We have found that many companies are at different stages in their journey of getting data out of their machines to use within the rest of the organization. So first off, what we do is we go and connect to all of the sensors and devices on a manufacturing floor. And we connect with protocols such as Modbus, OPC UA, Siemens, Allen Bradley, MQTT, and others. Once we do that, we utilize tags to determine what data to pull from those machines and how often to pull that data. Once we have that data connected, we store all of the data in an integrated database. You never lose any data. It's a lightweight JSON database, and you don't need a database administrator. Integrated also into the solution is an MQTT broker. It's architected so that you never lose an MQTT message, and the delivery of those messages come in order. Once we've collected, stored it into our database, we're able to transform or enrich that data. We have a transform engine built into the solution. And just as an easy example, we're able to change the temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius or vice versa. And there's a number of other transforms that we can do, and we'll probably be able to show you one today as well. In addition to that, once we've transformed the data, we're able to deliver the data. So into a format such as JSON, SQL, or MQTT. And that way the rest of the business can then use the data that has been collected from those machines. Let me just share just three use cases very briefly. In conversations at shows and in meetings, a lot of companies are really trying to find ways to use the data from the machines to improve processes in a variety of ways. Use case number one is part traceability. So FairCom Edge can scale to thousands of data capture points, giving you data on part IDs, timestamps, location, status, and any other parameters that you need. Its multi-model architecture lets you query data through your preferred API to quickly and easily trace specific part IDs. So moving to use case number two, automation and control. With our software solution, you can collect massive amounts of data by scaling FairCom Edge to thousands of sensors and machines. You can configure our MQTT broker within the Edge to push data to analytics and enterprise applications when needed. You can query data in real time using both IT and OT APIs. And then briefly moving to the use case number three that we see often is predictive maintenance. So from that perspective, prevent equipment failures with real-time analytics. FairCom Edge automatically collects data from your machines and sensors and sends it to subscribing analytics apps. Edge also transforms and standardizes the data, providing higher quality information for predictive insights. So as we move to this slide, you're going to have a one question poll pop up. So once that pops up on your screen, please go ahead and answer that. And just as a visual here, I think this is, let's have you answer that before I kind of focus on this next visual. And then we'll get the time turned over to Walter after this next graphic. So go ahead and answer that question. So if you think about FairCom Edge, we're the glue of glues, and we sit in the middle with the ability to integrate data into other systems in the business. So two important last considerations are we're architected and built to be on-prem. So you can drive real-time insights and computing at the edge. So this minimizes latency and security concerns with the cloud. We will get the data that you want to the cloud, but you only send the data that you have analyzed, dramatically driving down your cloud costs from that perspective. So let's get to it. Walter Johnson is a senior engineer with FairCom. Before joining FairCom, he was a FairCom customer for 24 years. He joined FairCom because of his passion for databases and programming. When he's not building databases to track his personal life, he enjoys reading, programming in C, C++, and Python. He has a BS in computer science and 30 plus years in database technology. So Walter is going to share the capabilities of FairCom Edge using the Modbus protocol. Walter, you're up.
All right. So what are we gonna demo today? We're going to so I have this little Envio Nano device. It's just a simple temperature sensor, and it talks Modbus. So we're going to show connecting to that device, reformatting the data because the manufacturer didn't provide the data in a particularly useful fashion. So we're going to show converting that into something more useful. We're going to show how we're going to store it. We're going to show how we can access it, what we can, in ways we can, all the different ways we can deliver it, things like that. So first of all, let's talk about MQTT for a minute. A lot of you are already aware of MQTT. In case you're not, it's a part of a lot of people's Industry 4.0 initiative because it's this great little lightweight standard that allows you to send messages from point A to point B. It's a publish subscribe, so you can publish messages on a topic, and then multiple people can, or services, or whatever, can subscribe to that topic and get that data. So we've got an MQTT broker built into our product to allow you to do that sort of thing. And then anything that is sent to us on any topic and with any format as the payload, we just ingest that automatically with zero config. So that's great, except for this little Envio Nano device. It doesn't understand MQTT. It's a small device. There isn't any way to add MQTT to it that I'm aware of. But I want to get the data from it, and I want to get it into my data stream. So we have the concept of inputs. So we can, on an input, we can define a piece of equipment and go out and get the data, go talk to that equipment. And we're going to want to talk to the equipment in its native protocol whenever possible, because if you have a PLC, often you can add a module onto that PLC to get it to do this or that, but the PLC is busy getting its primary job done, and we don't want to load that down. So if possible, let's just talk to it in its native format, in this case, Modbus. Now, you probably have your own favorite. Some of you are thinking, yeah, Modbus is where it's at. Other people are like, no, I love this other one better. At some point, there's probably going to be a poll that pops up letting you tell us what your favorite protocol is. But for today, we're going to be talking Modbus. Okay. So here is our Edge product running. It normally just installs as a service so that you don't see any UI. It's just running there in the background. But for the demo, I have it configured to show its UI. Okay, so with the Edge product come a series of web-based utilities. Now, it's nice that they're web-based because you don't have to install anything else to use these utilities, and they're accessible from the computer that's running Edge or any other computer on the same network. You got a web browser, you can get out these utilities. Of course, you have to be able to authenticate. Everything has to be secure. So today we're going to use the like these top three utilities. We're going to hop back around and use all of them, and I'll walk you through that. So we're going to start out in the Data Explorer, because Data Explorer does a lot of different things. The primary uses we're going to use it for is to look at the data inside the Edge product and also to configure the Edge product. So I'm going to tell it about this Modbus device now. I'm going to tell it an IP address. I'm going to tell it, that it's Modbus. And I'm going to say how often I want to collect the data. And then I want to define the data I want to collect. Now, this is a JSON object that I'm showing you. For some of you, you're very familiar with JSON. Again, JSON is very often used in people's Industry 4.0 initiatives. But if you're not familiar with JSON, this looks a little bit like code, but really it's not code. It's just a data description language. So it's structured, and there's a tag and then a value for all of it. So which one of these things is the Modbus server IP? Well, it's probably the one labeled Modbus server. So that makes it nice. JSON's easy to work with. It's kind of self-describing. You can look at this and you can figure out like, oh, here's where I put the Modbus data address, for instance. It goes right here. So that's what we're looking at. So in this case, I want to pull two tags because this device, it gives me the temperature as the whole portion and a fractional portion as two different tags. So the data is there, but it's not super helpful because all I want is the, 23.1 or whatever what the value is. So it's kind of inconvenient that it gives it to me in these two halves, but I'm going to pull those two halves. Now, a lot of this is just specific to Modbus. All of this information is just me telling Modbus like, hey, here's how I want to pull this tag from this device. But also I've got this property path, that I'm including. This is not part of Modbus. This is something that we're doing. And what this is a JSON property with an optional path. And what this allows me to do is automatically and continuously turn this data into a JSON object. Because yeah, if I love Modbus and I'm the guy who can, talk Modbus in his sleep, that's great. But if I'm anybody else in the company, the Modbus kind of proprietary stuff isn't super helpful. JSON, although I could hand that to anybody and anybody could make sense out of it. So also some information down here is how long I want this data to exist. We've got it set now to keep the data for 30 days and then purge it. Of course, you can control this. You can set it to never purge the data. Like Jared was saying, we don't like to lose data. We don't like you to lose data. It makes us sad. So we allow you to pick how long this data is going to exist, because also maybe this thing is running on a smaller industrial device that's it's in the factory next to some equipment, and maybe that has limited flash storage. So we would want to control how long this data exists, so you have full control over that. Okay, so this JSON object describes an input, in this case, my NVO Nano device. So I'm going to hit this play button to send this command to the Edge product. And so now that is done. Edge is now every 10 seconds, it's going out and collecting that data from that device. So this is great if you like to script things, if you're a very technical person, but what if you're not? What if what if this JSON object is looking a little bit, can possibly confusing to you, or, this is not what you wanted to see? Well, no worries, because we also have a web-based way to do the same thing. So I can come over here to Edge Explorer, which is another utility, and I can see, here's that input I just added. I can look at this as a series of dialogues. And also, if I want to add a new one, I could have added this input just by going through these dialogues and filling out the things for it. So you can see as we go through here, it's the same information. Here's the IP address, the port, the different, and then if I keep going, see, here's that tag information. So I can add as many tags as I want. So this is kind of a little less scary of a way to do it. This is great for when you're like working out, like, hey, I got to pull some data from this device. Let me just play around with it. Let me make sure I get the right IP. Let me make sure I'm getting the right data, poke at it. And then it's like, oh, that's what I want. But under the hood, all of this information is just stored in that JSON object. So anytime I want, I can specify an input via the graphical user interface, or I can do it with the direct JSON object. So we have both ways to satisfy both the technical and the non-technical. Okay, so we'll switch back to where we were. Okay, so that input is happening. Now, as we discussed, the data coming from this device isn't in a super convenient format. It's in these two chunks. What I really want is just the temperature. And also, like Jared hinted at, I get Celsius. Not everybody at my company understands Celsius. In the US, we're still kind of hung up on imperial units. So it'd be great if I also had that same temperature in Fahrenheit. Both would be awesome. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, it's pretty simple. I can utilize our transform engine. And now there's several different ways to utilize the transform engine. There's some built-in transforms. There's, ways to restructure and reshape data. But also we have a JavaScript V8 transform available, which allows me to specify a little bit of JavaScript code. In this case, it's code that looks like this. Now, this is all optional. You're not required to know coding. And if you wanted to do a transform and you're not comfortable with it, we're happy to help you with that. We could even write it for you if necessary. So don't stress out about that. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two chunks and I'm going to take the whole part and I'm going to add the fractional part divided by 10 and put that into a variable. And then I'm going to store that as in two different ways. I'm going to put it into its own column in this table. And I'm also going to create a second JSON object that has the Fahrenheit and the Celsius and, all together. So, this will make sense after I show it to you. But what you need to know is I've just written this little bit of JSON code here. Now, I've got it embedded in this line here in this JSON object so that it's, so that it can get stuffed in there. So I'm going to create this little bit of code. I'm going to send that to our product. And then the code is reusable, so it isn't connected to anything yet. So what I want to do next is tie that to a transform. And then the transform just says, hey, take the source payload that has the two pieces of the data, and then stick that into a temperature C, a temperature F, and a corrected payload. And then it specifies that little bit of code that I wrote. And then it tells it like these fields that I'm adding, we can specify what their data type is so that it's the correct data type. So let's send that. Now the transforms are also reusable. So the last step I need to do is say, now that I have this transform, attach it to this input that I've already created. And then as soon as I do that, it's going to be pulling the data, performing the transform, which calls the little bit of code, and then putting the results in the record. So we'll run that. Okay, now we're all set. Now we can go look at this data and I'll show you what's going on. So I'm going to switch over to this section over here, which lets me kind of drill down into the product and see the data that, as we're storing it. So we'll go into what I called it, and then we'll go to the later end. Okay, so now if I select one of these rows, everything is time-stamped, of course. We need to know when these things are happening, so we automatically and continuously timestamp every reading. Now, if we look at the source payload, we will see it originally as it was recorded, the whole part of the temperature and the fractional part with the timestamp. So this is like we told it to, it made a JSON object of this, and this is great if, but it isn't exactly how I wanted it. So as I discussed, we now have this corrected payload JSON object. Look, that's what I wanted. This is what I wanted. This is how I wish the manufacturer had just provided the data is just like this, because I've got temperature in Celsius and temperature in Fahrenheit. So now I have both of those as a JSON object. So that's great. Now, a lot of things are, suggest themselves to be solved with JSON because JSON is great at certain tasks. Other things are better solved with, a more traditional tabular database format. well, it'd be great if I could have both. Well, as part of my transform, I did that. So if we close this, you can see that we also have these two columns along with the rest. Let me make these a little bigger so you can see which one is which. See, there's temperature in C, and there is the temperature in Fahrenheit. So now we have the data in multiple formats. So what have we done so far? We've talked Modbus to a Modbus device, talked its industrial, it's a proprietary binary protocol. We've converted that into a JSON object. We converted that JSON object into the format that we kind of wish had been from the beginning, because now it's useful. It's just easy to use. We put that into a traditional tabular database format and also a JSON format. Now, let's talk about how we might use that data. So we'll switch back to the API Explorer. First thing I want to do is I want to make this fixed payload JSON object available over MQTT. Because like I said, people just want this, for some uses, they just want a stream of the live data. But after I've gone through and, done a little bit with it, I could also have, do some validity checking and then add a JSON property that's like data is valid or data is invalid. I can do a lot of different things with this. But for now, I'm just going to take that corrected payload, and I want to send that out over a topic. And the topic for MQTT that I'm going to pick is demo/nano fixed, so that I can remember that this is the one where I've corrected translated the data. So we're going to send that. Now, anybody or any process that needs this and has the correct credentials can subscribe and get a continuous stream of this data. So let's show that. We'll switch over to this MQ Explorer. This is another utility that kind of just shows the MQTT side of things so that we can keep track of what's going on. So if we click on the topics, yeah, see, here's that demo/nano fixed. There's my topic. Well, what does the data look like on that? Let's subscribe to that topic over MQTT. And then, like I said, we're pulling data every 10 seconds. So the next time we pull data, not only will it translate it and store it and do all that stuff, but now it's providing it, it's delivering it over MQTT. And see, there's our nice object. This is this is the fixed object that has it in exactly how I wish it wanted, how I wish it needed, how I wish it were. Get tied up here. So instead of just having to work around the eccentricities of the data, the way that the manufacturer or the PLC or whoever generated it, now I can convert that and get it into the format that makes it easy to use. So that's nice. So now we've delivered it this way. Now, this is great for certain things, but what if I want to do some reporting on this? So I can do reporting over JSON data. It's not quite as easy as if it were just tabular data. So let's look at that next. How can I access this in a more tabular format? So for reporting, a really great way to do reporting is SQL. Now, a lot of you already know SQL. Some of you maybe are familiar with it, and some, may aren't as familiar with it. SQL is just a querying language that allows you to create data, to query data, you can even add data via SQL, but it's really great for reporting. So a lot of people are doing reports, but they're stuck in Excel, and Excel's great for that. But like, hey, I need report XYZ. So then one of my engineers has to like stop what he's doing, go out, fire up Excel, pull some data in from this source and some data in from that source, do a pivot table, do work his magic, and then ta-da, here's the report. Well, and then I come back and I'm like, well, now I need this other column. And then he cries and he wants a different job. So it's nice to use the right tool for the right job. SQL is great for that because it's very easy to generate reports, modify those reports, and then it's just available at the push of a button. Well, conveniently, we have a SQL engine, an ANSI standard SQL engine built into the product. So since I converted the data into tabular format, then I can easily access it via SQL. So I have a simple SQL command here that I can copy, and then we'll switch over to the SQL scripts tab where I can send a SQL command. In this case, I'm just going to grab the temperature in C, the temperature in F, where the temperature is greater, where the temperature in C is greater than 22. So I can run that and see there's my response. So now I've got reporting done. Now, That's nice. Now, if I wanted to do something really specific to my company where nothing else is really working, or I have my own processes that I want to implement, or for any other reason, if I want to kind of roll my own thing, well, this data is available over a nice JSON-based API. So I can, sky's the limit at that point. So let's look at that a little bit. So, and these are all just SQL files, or sorry, these are all JSON objects that are stored in a file that I have just staged so that I don't have to try and type all this stuff, but they're pretty simple. So as I said, we have this nice JSON-based API that allows me to just specify a JSON object describing what I want, send it to the product, and then the product sends me the response back in JSON. So in this case, I'm just saying, hey, get me the records in this table. And this isn't something you would do normally because there's going to be a lot of records in that table. But since we just barely started, we can do this. I just wanted to show how simple it can be. And then we specify the table name. And then we run that. Let me make the results a little bigger. See, and here are all those records in just an array of JSON objects. Well, there's a lot of stuff in here that's kind of internal to us that I don't care about. So of course the API allows me to specify, oh, hey, only return a few fields. Oh, I can specify filters on the records. I can do a cursor where I can say get 20 records, next 20, next 20. I can go backwards, I can go forwards, all this stuff is available. So here's that same request, but just fewer fields. Ah, see, that's nice and tidy. If I scroll enough, I'll find one of the ones that has the values. Yeah, here we are. This is after I did the transform, so it has those extra values. Now, just to really mix things up, I can use the JSON-based API to send a SQL command. Now, normally you would do SQL over ODBC, JDBC, something like that, which of course we support. But if you're doing your own thing, you might want to use SQL so you could generate your own reports from a different place that doesn't understand ODBC or JDBC. Well, here's how you can do that. So here's a very similar SQL command from what I did before. Select the temperature in Celsius and Fahrenheit. But in this case, I said where the temperature in Celsius is greater than -22, I think all of my data will be warmer than -22 since the sensor is in my office and it is not in the dead of winter. So we'll run that, and you see what I get back from my SQL is that, the SQL data, but in a JSON array of JSON objects. So that's kind of nice. All right, so let's review a little bit. What have we done? We've set up our product to talk directly to this Invio Nano device that talks Modbus. It doesn't understand MQTT. We've corrected that data. The data is there. It's nice. It's doing what it needs to do, but it would be nicer if it were in a more, nice format. So we put it into that other format. We've made a JSON object out of it for things that use JSON. We've made it into a tabular table for things that want to do reporting, SQL, no SQL access, all of that stuff. All that is available. We have, 50 plus APIs that allow you to access this data. We've been in this business a long time. Incidentally, all of this data it only lasts however long I tell it to last. It is secured. It can be encrypted both over the wire and on disk if necessary. Everything's got to be secure nowadays. We all have to think about security. So we provide you all those tools to be secure. It can be backed up. It can all that stuff. Then it's also available for all these other uses. So our goal here is like, you got your data, you got your machines, they're doing your thing, they're making your money. But can we just slip that data out of there and get it into the right format so that it can do something it hasn't been able to do before? Because it's there, or maybe I'm starting new and I haven't done anything with the data, but we just want to kind of solve the data problem for you, give you the tools that you need to do what you wanted to do, but you haven't been able to. So that's it for my presentation. We'll stop presenting. Okay.
Walter, thank you very much. That was really great. We appreciate you walking us through that. Let's open it up for Q&A. So we have a couple of engineers on the line with us, Walter, and then Randall's also fielding questions. So do we have any questions? There's a box at the bottom of Zoom called Q&A. It's kind of got a little rectangle, not a square around it. Just pop on there, jump in there, and ask any questions that you may have so that we can get your questions answered.
Okay, we have a question about what other protocols are available. Now we are so out of the box, we support let's see, what's the list? Modbus, OPC UA, Allen Bradley, which is also Ethernet IP, MQTT, Siemens S7, and then we are adding protocols kind of like as they are requested, whatever is the most popular next protocol. We found that the ones that we have so far cover a lot of use cases. And if you have a protocol that we don't support, you can of course ask us, and we will be adding those as necessary. We also have a plugin architecture so that if somebody was, kind of impatient and wanted to, they have a very specific protocol that other people don't use, but they really want it, that we would give them the information that they could write their own plugin and do their own protocol if necessary. Yeah, so I see somebody's asking about BACnet. That is one that we are looking at. I can't say off the top of my head where that is in the list, but that is one that's on our roadmap.
I'll just augment the
Um,
answer. I think the
Everybody
next one
has,
on our roadmap is
yeah, go ahead.
NIT Connect. That's coming soon. And then obviously, as Walter mentioned, there's a number of in line to add additional protocols. So if there's one that's important to your organization, let's talk about it, right? And let's see if we can't get that in the roadmap to get it built for you.
One thing that I forgot to include in my presentation is dashboarding. Dashboarding is a really exciting thing that you're either doing or you probably wish you were doing. So with the Edge product, we don't necessarily include a dashboarding engine, but we are compatible with all the dashboarding engines. So, they can plug right into us and get that data. And once you get the data kind of like cleaned up and fixed, oh, the dashboarding goes so much easier. So that is available also. And if you don't have a dashboarding tool and you're like, don't really, you're not sure what to do about that, then we can suggest a simple, easy, approachable dashboarding tool that lets you get your feet wet and figure out what it is you want to
And
do.
Walter, I'll augment there. We're seeing a
Um,
lot of customers that will use Power BI, Grafana, as well as Node-RED, and we integrate nicely with all of those visualization tools. So and there's others that we obviously integrate with as well. So dashboarding is important, obviously, once you get the data out, and we definitely work well with visualization tools.
Yeah, because once you can see the data, it just like all kinds of things jump out at you. I love being able, I do dashboards just for fun sometimes, just to entertain myself. I see a question about are all protocols included or are they, do you have to pay extra for them? And no, I believe, Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, but I
That
believe
is
all the
correct.
protocols are included.
The
We're not
solution
gonna
comes with
piecemeal
all
you on that.
protocols included. Great question. And we've opened the chat for any questions. If you want, instead of going in the QA, you can just
Yeah.
open the chat and ask questions there as well. So
I see a question about older devices, legacy devices. Again, anything that doesn't support any of these protocols, we can talk and try and identify like the quickest, easiest way to talk to that device. Sometimes the sensor it doesn't even have the sensor you need. So then we have partners we can get involved and add a sensor to a device and then talk to that sensor. So it's often kind of a one-off solution for these older devices. I have a question about is the interface available remotely? That so it can be. It depends on how your network is set up. We don't lock that down specifically. A lot of people do lock their network down, so it'll just depend on how your company is set up. If you have like this network is only for this stuff, that network is only for that stuff, then if there's a path between the computer you'd like to do the config on and the edge server, no problem. If not, then you're going to have to fire up a VPN or do something that gets you connected to that network. And yes, the question on is the MQTT broker built in? Yes, it is. Now, let me just mention our product is not one of those where we bought like 6 different pieces of open source this and that and kind of bolted them together and gosh, I hope it all works together and good luck configuring it. No, we've handled all that for you. It's all in one package. It's all in one executable. It's easy to install. We don't have any problem running in a container on a, so we're virtualizable in that regard, but you don't have to. A lot of software is like, it's so hard to install that by the time you get done installing it, then you're like, oh, nobody touched that installation ever. We're just going to make a container of that and we're never going to think about that again. We're just not that hard. So we're containerable, sure, easy, but it's not, we don't require that because we're not that complicated. Um, so on the, okay, I'm not as familiar with Snowflake. I've heard of that. Um, if there's a streaming protocol that we are not supporting, again, we're open to looking at that, and we, we'd be interested in putting that on our roadmap because that's our goal. Our goal is to deliver the data and however you need it. So we've picked kind of MQTT at first because that's a common use, and we're looking at others. Now, we have a question here about can configurations be saved and shared for distribution to other users? Yes, because like I said, so there's two ways to configure the product. You can configure it by connecting to that utility and like, tabbing through those fields and typing it in. But once you get it sorted out, my recommendation is you save that JSON object because often you're going to be standing up like 10 or 20 of these things, right? So what I see a lot of people do is they get a base JSON object and then they have something that lets them to script or in some way just automate that so they can be like, okay, replace the IP, replace this, replace that, and then go. And so then it's easy to just save, and you saw me doing this. I've just saved off all these config JSON objects as files on my drive. I could give those to whomever to run this demo, and then I can just bring up each one. And I used our UI to do that, but you're not required to. Anything that can send an HTTP request can access our API and use these and send these JSON objects and then parse the request or the response to the request. We have a great question about aggregation and averages and historic calculations. Yeah, we have a full aggregation engine that I use as part of my dashboarding. So we do store the data as it comes from the sensor. Now, often that's inconvenient because, like, for instance, this sensor that I'm using, like every 10 seconds that I've got it configured for, if I'm trying to show a week's worth of data, that's a lot of readings. So what I'll do in that case is I'll use our aggregation engine and set up a table that draws from the raw data, but then says, give me like a min, max, and an average for each, 2 minutes or 5 minutes section or whatever. And then that table is what I'll use to draw my graphs to do, like bigger, wider scope stuff, because that's a lot less data. And then I can tailor that to the solution. So yes, we're aware of that. Also, as part of the API, you can specify like some data comes in really fast and you're just kind of interested in like, did it go out of range or did it do this or did it do that? How many times did this happen? So as part of the input, you can specify like collect 100 samples of the data and then just let me ask questions about that. Um, so I have a question about how often are you updating or adding protocols, and that's just as kind of as needed, as they come up. So we've got, like Jared said, we've added one or two, I think this year. We've got another one that's in beta. I didn't include it here because it isn't quite ready yet, but it's coming up really soon. And then we've got a pipeline of ones that we're adding after that. And then obviously anybody who has you know, a, a big need for a specific one, talk to us. We're open to that. Okay. I think, do we want to, yeah. So our support system, we've got a question about support. That is something that's kind of unique to us. We have no tier one support. The people whose job is to read a script and get you to hang up. We don't employ those people. Your support requests come directly to an engineer who understands the product and who, can give you the answer, a detailed, specific answer. And we kind of expect, we're talking to smart people and they've refined the problem. They've already tried the simple stuff. So, we're looking to give you the specific answer you're looking for in our support. And that's included. And we're specifically as you're starting up, as you're trying this out, as you're, doing your first POC, we expect to be supporting you along that path, helping you out, answering your questions, giving you suggestions. Often we will write up examples to be like, hey, here's something close to what you're looking for. Try this out, see how it works, and then you can ask us like, oh, can I customize it in this way or that way? And we like to work directly with our customers in a close way. Okay, question about can we read data more than once a second? Absolutely. We have some, okay, so we've been in the data industry a long time. We have some high volume users. So our engine can support a lot of data. We have one customer that is ingesting like the entire stock ticker, for instance, live and asking questions about it. So we have a tunable engine, so we can tune it specifically to handle higher volume. So that is not a problem. We have a question about IT versus OT. That can be a hurdle to cross because often like the OT stuff is siloed, the IT stuff is siloed. They don't really want to talk to each other. We can help out with that because we can give you the tools to get stuff from OT to IT and keep both halves happy. That's our goal because we're not looking to mess with the controls engineers and screw up their stuff, but we understand you got reporting you got to do, you got this you got to do. So there's a question about a specific distro of Linux. That is a great question, something I had intended to mention. We are platform agnostic. We are OS agnostic. I kind of kid around a little bit and I say, if it has an OS and boots, we either already support it or give us a week. We've been in this a long time. We support a lot of different distros of Unix, a lot of different, Linux variants. I don't think we would have any problem with any specific Linux variant. And that is the two places we see us getting deployed a lot is in Windows, but even bigger is Linux. A lot of people have identified Linux as a great OS that's secure and is going to do what they need to do in the industrial environment. So yeah, if it's a Linux variant, we probably already support it. And if we don't, not going to be a big deal.
Yeah, they have.
Well, these have been
Yeah,
some
and
great
if we
questions.
don't
Thank
if
you
we
for your
don't get to
questions.
your question, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can answer any that we didn't get to. And there's let me move to the next slide. There is a nice QR code. This is an opportunity so we've shown you one industrial protocol, Modbus. We obviously offer a number of others, and we'd love to set up a tailored demo for your organization. We can listen to what you're trying to do, and then we can show you the software to actually show that in essence, how it would work in your organization. So looking forward to doing that with a number of you on the meeting with us. You can just use your phone, just like you do a regular QR code, and it should pop up and we can work there. In addition, if there's any questions that we didn't answer, we will follow up this webinar with some information, some documents that you can look at and peruse, and then feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions. But we appreciate you jumping on, spending time with us. We love this technology. About 5, 6, 7 years ago, we looked at the market and saw everything going to the edge, and here we are. And I can't tell you the number of customers that came up to us at these events that we've been to recently saying, it's time, we've got to get the data out of our machines. And the great thing is we have a great solution to do that. So reach out to us, let us spend some time with your organization, showing you how we can provide value to you. Thank you for joining us. And as we discussed, making your machines talk. Have a wonderful day, and we appreciate your time.